Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the human research ship Valiant Dawn, watching the stars through the main window. The ship had been traveling for 3 days through deep space when the emergency signal came through. The sound cut through the quiet hum of the engines like a knife. "Captain, we're getting a priority message from Nexus Prime," said Lieutenant Tom Bradley from the communication station. His voice carried worry that made everyone on the bridge look up from their work. Jake walked over to the main screen as it flickered to life. The face that appeared belonged to Ambassador Zethkar, one of the most important leaders in the Galactic Council. The alien's blue skin looked pale, and his usually calm eyes showed fear. "Captain Morrison, I need you to listen carefully," Zethkar said. His voice shook slightly. "Something terrible has awakened in the dark space beyond our borders. We call them the Devourers." Dr. Lisa Parker, the ship's scientist who studied alien life, moved closer to hear better. She had worked with many strange creatures before, but the name itself made her feel cold. "These things have been sleeping for thousands of years," the ambassador continued. "Now they're awake and moving toward our worlds. They eat energy itself. They drain the power from ships, from planets, from living beings. Everything they touch dies." Jake felt his heart beat faster. "How many ships are we talking about?" "Ships?" Zethkar's laugh sounded bitter. "Captain, these are not ships. These are living creatures the size of moons. They move through space like fish through water, and there are thousands of them." The UI screen showed blurry images of the creatures. They looked like giant jellyfish made of dark energy, with long tentacles that stretched for miles. Where they passed, stars grew dim and planets went cold. "We've lost contact with 17 star systems in the past week," Zethkar said. "The Altarian fleet tried to fight them yesterday. 300 ships, Captain. Gone in minutes. Chief." Engineer Ryan Cole, who had been working quietly at his station, dropped his tools. 300 ships? How is that possible?" "They don't fight like we do," the ambassador explained. "They just touch you and your power dies. Your engines stop, your life support fails, then they drain everything else until there's nothing." "Left." Dr. Parker stepped forward. "Ambassador, do we know what they want? Why are they moving toward populated space?" "We don't know," Zethkar admitted. "All we know is that they're coming this way, and every species in their path is running. The Centauri are loading their people onto generation ships. The Korgon Empire is abandoning their homeworlds. Even the machine races are fleeing." Jake stared at the images on the screen. In all his years in space, he had never seen anything that scared entire civilizations into running. "What's the Council's plan?" "Evacuation," Zethkar said simply. "We're telling everyone to get as far away as possible. Pack what you can and run. It's the only way to survive." "And Earth?" Jake asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Earth is directly in their path, Captain. You have maybe 6 months before they reach your solar system." The bridge fell silent except for the soft beeping of the ship's computers. Jake looked around at his crew. Tom Bradley was young, barely out of the academy. Ryan Cole had a wife and 2 children back on Mars. Dr. Parker had spent her whole life studying how to help different species work together. "Captain," Dr. Parker said quietly, "I need to see those readings again. There might be something in the data that can help us understand them." Jake nodded. "Do it. Ryan, can you boost our communications? I need to get a message to Earth Defense. Command right away." "Already on it, sir," Ryan said, his hands flying over his controls. As his crew worked, Jake watched the images of the Devourers again. They moved through space with a purpose that scared him more than their size or power. This wasn't random destruction. They were hunting. "Tom, set course for Earth. Maximum speed," Jake ordered. "And send a warning to every human ship and station, between here and home." "Yes, sir," Tom replied, but his voice was tight with fear. Dr. Parker looked up from her analysis station. "Captain, I'm seeing something strange in these energy readings. The Devourers aren't just eating randomly. They're following specific paths through space like they're looking for something." "What kind of something?" Jake asked. "I don't know yet. But whatever it is, it's in the direction they're heading." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. If the Devourers were looking for something specific, and they were heading toward Earth, then humanity might be in even more danger than anyone realized. The hours passed slowly as the valiant Dawn raced through hyperspace toward home. Jake couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the fear in Ambassador Zethkar's voice, about 300 Altarian ships dying in minutes, about his own family back on Earth. When Ryan finally got their long-range communications working properly, Jake sent the most important message of his life to Admiral Helen Brooks at Earth Defense Command. "Admiral, this is Captain Morrison aboard the Valiant Dawn. We have confirmed reports of a massive threat moving toward human space. The aliens call them Devourers, and they've already destroyed 17 star systems. Every other species is running, but Earth is directly in their path. We need every ship, every station, every person ready for what's coming. This is not a war we can win with normal weapons. We need to find another way, and we need to find it fast." As the message transmitted across the galaxy toward Earth, Jake looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there in the darkness, an ancient evil was coming for humanity. And for the first time in his career, Captain Jake Morrison wasn't sure if they could survive what was heading their way. Admiral Helen Brooks stood in the war room at Earth Defense Command, watching the biggest evacuation in galactic history unfold on the main screens. Ships filled the sky above Earth like a swarm of metal insects, alien vessels of every shape and size crowded the space lanes, all heading in the same direction, away from the coming darkness. "Admiral, we have another refugee fleet requesting passage through the Sol system," reported Colonel Danny White from his position at the traffic control station. "It's the Centauri Coalition, 2,000 ships carrying their entire population." Helen nodded grimly. "Grant them safe passage. How many more are coming?" "The Korgan Empire fleet will arrive in 6 hours. The Crystalline Collective is breaking apart their homeworlds rather than let the Devourers have them. Even the machine races are running scared." Dr. Amy Sanders looked up from her calculations at the science station. Her face was pale as she delivered the news everyone feared. "Admiral, at their current speed, the Devourers will reach our outer colonies in 4 months. They'll be at Earth in 6. The room fell quiet, except for the constant chatter of radio communications from the fleeing alien ships. Helen had seen many battles in her 30 years of service, but she had never faced anything like this. The enemy wasn't just powerful, it was unstoppable. Every species that had tried to fight the Devourers was dead. Lieutenant Commander Steve Chen walked over from the intelligence station, carrying a data pad with a worried expression. "Admiral, I've been studying the evacuation patterns of the alien fleets. Something doesn't add up." "What do you mean?" Helen asked. "They're not running randomly. Look at this." Steve pointed to the star map on the screen. "Every species is heading to the same region of space. It's like they're being pushed toward a specific area." Dr. Sanders studied the pattern Steve was showing them. "He's right. The Devourers aren't just destroying everything in their path, they're herding the populations like cattle." Helen felt her blood turn cold. "You think this is planned? That they're farming civilizations?" "It would explain why they're not moving as fast as they could," Steve said. "They want the aliens to escape, but only to where the Devourers want them to go." Colonel White looked up from his station with new urgency in his voice. "Admiral, I'm getting reports from our deep space monitors. The Altarian fleet that was destroyed yesterday, some of their escape pods made it out. The survivors are saying the Devourers didn't attack immediately. They waited like they were studying the ships first." Before Helen could respond, an urgent message came through from the archive worlds. Professor Kate Williams appeared on the communication screen, her gray hair messy from hours of research in the ancient libraries. "Admiral Brooks, I found something important in the old records," Professor Williams said breathlessly. "The Devourers have been here before." Helen leaned forward. "What do you mean?" 50,000 years ago, there was another Devourer invasion. The records are incomplete, but they mention a species that fought back. They called them the Guardians. According to what I can translate, the Guardians made a great sacrifice to seal the Devourers away. "What happened to these Guardians?" Dr. Sanders asked. Professor Williams shook her head. "The records don't say clearly, but the fighting methods they describe sound familiar. They used coordinated attacks, sacrifice tactics, and something called pack bonding to defeat enemies much stronger than themselves. Steve Chen looked at the data again. Pack bonding? That sounds human. That's what I thought too, Professor Williams said. Admiral, what if humans aren't new to this galaxy? What if we're the descendants of the species that fought the Devourers before? Helen stared at the professor's image on the screen. The idea seemed impossible, but it would explain why humans were so different from other species. Why they fought together instead of running when things got bad. Even if that's true, Colonel White said, how does it help us now? We don't have the weapons or knowledge the original Guardians had. Before anyone could answer, President Maria Rodriguez entered the war room. Her face was set with determination that Helen recognized. It was the same look she had seen on human soldiers before they charged into impossible battles. Admiral, I've been listening to the reports from our ships throughout the galaxy, the President said. Every alien species is running. Every one of them has given up their homes, their history, everything they built rather than fight. Madam President, the threat is beyond anything we've ever faced, Helen replied carefully. I know. But I also know humans. We don't run from bullies even when they're bigger than us. President Rodriguez walked to the main screen showing the evacuation fleets. I'm making an announcement to the galaxy. Earth will not evacuate. We're going to stand and fight. The room erupted in worried voices, but the President held up her hand for silence. I know it sounds like suicide, but think about what we've learned. These creatures have a plan. They're herding everyone towards something. If we run, we're just playing into their hands. If we fight, we might find a way to stop them. Admiral Brooks understood the decision, even if it scared her. What are your orders, Madam President? Mobilize everything, every ship, every station, every weapon we have. If the original Guardians could seal these things away, then maybe we can too. Dr. Sanders, I want you working with Professor Williams. Find out everything you can about the last Devourer War. As the President left to make her announcement to the galaxy, Helen began the largest military mobilization in human history. Within hours, civilian ships were being converted to carry weapons. Mining stations became fortress bases. Even passenger liners were being fitted with whatever guns they could carry. The alien evacuation fleets received the news with shock. Many called humanity insane. Others whispered that the humans might actually have a chance. Deep in space, ancient sensors detected the change in human behavior and began to wake up systems that had been sleeping for 50,000 years. Colonel White looked at the tactical display showing human ships gathering from across the galaxy. Admiral, we're really going to do this. We're going to fight something that destroyed entire civilizations. Helen nodded, watching their forces assemble. Colonel, if we're the descendants of the Guardians, then maybe fighting impossible odds is what we were born to do. Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez wiped sweat from his forehead as he watched another civilian cargo ship getting fitted with military weapons. The shipyard above Mars had become the busiest place in human space, with workers converting every vessel they could find into fighting ships. How many more do we have left? Asked his assistant, looking at the long line of ships waiting for upgrades. About 200 civilian ships, 50 mining vessels, and 30 passenger liners, Tony replied. We're turning school buses into tanks, but it's all we have. 3 months had passed since President Rodriguez announced humanity would fight instead of run. The aliens had called them crazy, but Tony had never been prouder to be human. While other species packed their belongings and fled, humans rolled up their sleeves and got to work. Dr. Patricia Miller rushed into the engineering bay carrying a data tablet with excitement written all over her face. Tony, we might have found something important. What kind of something? Tony asked, setting down his tools. It started with Corporal Jimmy Davis on the New Frontier station. He noticed that the Devourers avoid certain areas of space where we have specific radio frequencies running. Tony raised an eyebrow. Radio frequencies scare them? Not just any frequencies. Very specific electromagnetic patterns. We tested it, and the creatures actually seemed to feel pain from certain wavelengths. Dr. Miller pulled up data on her tablet. Look at this. When we broadcast these frequencies, the Devourers slow down and change direction. Tony studied the readings. As an engineer, he understood energy patterns better than most people. If we can hurt them with electromagnetic energy, maybe we can build weapons that actually work. That's exactly what we're thinking, Dr. Miller said. But we need to test it in real combat conditions. Captain Laura Johnson got that chance 2 weeks later. Her destroyer Iron Will had been one of the first ships upgraded with the new electromagnetic weapons. She led her crew toward the Proxima system, where scouts had detected a small group of devourers. "All stations report ready, Captain," said her first officer, Lieutenant Gary Phillips. Laura stared at the view screen showing 3 devourer creatures floating in space like giant jellyfish made of darkness. Each one was the size of a small moon, with tentacles that moved slowly through the void. "This is it, people," Laura announced to her crew. "We're about to be the first humans to fire on a devourer. Make it count." The Iron Will opened fire with its new electromagnetic cannons. Bright beams of energy struck the closest devourer, and something amazing happened. The creature jerked backward like it had been slapped. Dark energy leaked from the wounds, and the monster let out a sound that came through space itself. "We heard it!" Gary shouted with excitement. "The readings show actual damage." But their celebration was short-lived. The wounded devourer made a horrible screaming sound that seemed to travel faster than light. Within minutes, sensors detected the main devourer swarm changing course and speeding up. "Captain Johnson to all ships," Laura broadcast on the emergency channel. "The electromagnetic weapons work, but we've got a problem." Hurting one of them alerted the whole swarm. "They're coming faster now." Back at Earth Defense Command, Admiral Brooks received the news with mixed feelings. They had a weapon that could hurt the devourers, but they had also cut their preparation time in half. 3 months instead of 6, she said to General Frank Thompson, who was coordinating the construction of their defensive line. "Can we be ready?" Frank looked at the construction reports from across 12 star systems. "We'll have to be. The Artemis Line is humanity's only chance." The Artemis Line was the largest construction project in human history. Stretching across 12 star systems between the Devourers and Earth, it consisted of heavily armed space stations, converted asteroid bases, and massive arrays of the new electromagnetic weapons. Billy Martinez was one of millions of civilian volunteers working around the clock to build the defenses. He had been a construction worker on Luna before the crisis, but now he was welding armor plates onto a battle station that would determine humanity's survival. "Billy, we need those power conduits connected in the next 2 hours, called his supervisor, Maria Santos. "Already on it," Billy replied, crawling into a narrow maintenance tunnel with his tools. Around him, thousands of other workers were doing the same thing. Humans from every colony and station had volunteered to help build the line that would save their species. Commander Susan Baker led the dangerous job of gathering intelligence on the approaching enemy. Her stealth ship Shadow Runner could get close to the Devourer swarm without being detected, but each mission was a gamble with death. "The main swarm is bigger than we thought," she reported during her latest reconnaissance mission. "I count over 3,000 creatures, with more joining them every day. They're absorbing smaller groups as they move toward us." Susan watched, through her ship's sensors, as the Devourers consumed the abandoned Altarian homeworld. The planet's energy was drained in hours, leaving behind a cold, dead rock floating in space. "They're not just destroying things," she continued her report. "They're learning from what they consume. Each world they take makes them smarter and stronger." Far away from the battle preparations, the alien refugee fleets watched humanity's efforts with growing amazement. The Centauri High Command held emergency meetings about the humans' impossible determination. "They're actually building defenses," Ambassador Zethkar told his superiors. "Not running, not hiding, building weapons and preparing to fight." "Have they lost their minds?" asked another Centauri leader. "Maybe," Zethkar replied. "Or maybe they remember something the rest of us have forgotten. How to stand and fight when everything seems hopeless." Some alien ships began to slow their evacuation, watching from a safe distance to see what would happen. The proud Korgan warriors, who had been among the first to flee, started having second thoughts about abandoning the fight. As the 3rd month ended and the Devourer swarm approached the outer edge of the Artemis Line, humanity made its final preparations. Ships took their positions, weapons were charged, and millions of humans across the galaxy held their breath. The ancient enemy that had consumed countless civilizations was about to meet the descendants of the only species that had ever defeated them. The question was whether humanity could remember how to be the guardians they once were, or if they would join the list of dead worlds floating in the Devourer's wake. The Devourer swarm arrived like a living nightmare. Admiral Helen Brooks watched from the bridge of her super dreadnought Defiance as thousands of dark creatures spread across the star field like spilled ink. Each one was the size of a moon, their tentacles reaching out for miles in every direction. "My God," whispered Captain Rick Taylor over the communication channel from his position at the outer markers. "There are so many of them." Helen had seen the intelligence reports, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. The swarm stretched across multiple star systems, blocking out entire suns with their massive bodies. The darkness they brought seemed to eat light itself. "All stations, this is Admiral Brooks," she announced to the entire Artemis line. "Today we find out what humans are made of. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every species that ever lived." The battle began at Station Alpha 7, where Captain Rick Taylor commanded a squadron of converted cargo ships. The Devourers moved toward them like a slow tide of death. But Rick had learned something important during the months of preparation. "Fire. Electromagnetic cannons, full spread," Rick ordered. Brilliant beams of energy lanced out from his ships, striking the lead Devourers. The creatures recoiled, dark energy bleeding from their wounds. For the first time in 50,000 years, the ancient enemy was being hurt by organized resistance. "They're pulling back," shouted his weapons officer, Lieutenant Carol Foster. "The electromagnetic bursts are actually making them retreat." The news spread through the human fleet like wildfire. After centuries of stories about unstoppable cosmic horrors, humanity had found a way to fight back. Cheers echoed through communication channels as human crews realized they weren't helpless. But the Devourers were learning too. As the battle continued, they began to adapt their approach. Instead of charging straight forward, they started to surround human positions, using their massive numbers to overwhelm the electromagnetic defenses. Dr. Kevin Ross worked frantically aboard the research ship Discovery, trying to understand why the Devourers kept pushing toward Earth specifically. "There's something they want," he muttered, studying energy readings from deep space scanners. His breakthrough came when he detected a strange signal coming from Earth itself. "That's impossible," he said, checking his instruments again. The signal was coming from deep underground, somewhere near the South Pole. "Admiral Brooks, this is Dr. Ross on the Discovery," he called urgently. "The Devourers aren't just attacking randomly, they're being drawn to something on Earth, something very old." Helen received the message while coordinating the defense of Station Beta 12. "What kind of something, Doctor?" "I'm not sure, but it's been there for millions of years. Much older than human civilization. The Devourers are fighting so hard to reach Earth because of whatever is buried down there." Colonel Nancy Garcia was already mobilizing ground forces on Earth when Dr. Ross's Discovery reached the surface. Within hours, excavation teams were digging through Antarctic ice to reach the source of the mysterious signal. What they found changed everything. Buried 2 miles under the ice was a structure made of materials that didn't exist anywhere else in the galaxy. It pulsed with the same energy patterns that hurt the Devourers, but 1,000 times stronger. "It's some kind of dimensional anchor," Dr. Ross explained after examining the artifact. "I think this is what originally banished the Devourers to whatever dark realm they came from." The Discovery gave humanity new hope, but the battle in space was getting desperate. The Devourers had broken through the outer defense lines and were pushing toward the inner systems. Human ships fought bravely, but they were being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Captain Joe Martinez commanded the carrier Vigilant at the center of the human formation. He watched as Devourer creatures swarmed around his escorts, draining their power and leaving dead ships floating in space. "Admiral, we're losing too many ships," he reported. "We need a new strategy, or they're going to break through to Earth." That's when Joe noticed something important about how the Devourers moved. They weren't acting independently. When one creature was hurt, others nearby seemed to feel it too. When one changed direction, others followed. They're connected, he realized. Like a hive mind. If we can hurt the right one, we might be able to disrupt the whole group. Joe studied the swarm patterns on his tactical display. In the center of each major group was a larger creature, one that the others seemed to orbit around like planets around a sun. "All ships, this is Captain Martinez," he announced. "I'm going to try something crazy. Cover me." The Vigilant accelerated toward the heart of the nearest Devourer swarm, her fighter squadrons providing cover. Joe's plan was simple and desperate. Ram his ship directly into what looked like a command creature and detonate his electromagnetic weapons at point-blank range. "Captain, this is suicide," his first officer warned. "Maybe," Joe replied. "But if I'm right about the hive mind, this might save everyone else." The Vigilant crashed into the massive Devourer at full speed, her electromagnetic cannons firing continuously. The explosion lit up space for millions of miles, and something incredible happened. Every Devourer in the local group suddenly stopped, moving. They writhed in what looked like pain, their coordination completely broken. Some even started attacking each other in their confusion. "It worked," Admiral Brooks shouted from the Defiance. "All ships, target the large creatures in each group. Break their command structure." The tide of battle began to turn. Human ships, now knowing where to aim, started systematically targeting the command creatures. Each successful attack sent waves of disruption through the Devourer swarm. But the victory came at a terrible cost. The Vigilant was gone, along with Captain Martinez and his entire crew. Dozens of other ships had been lost, and the remaining Devourers were regrouping for a final assault on Earth itself. "They're adapting again," reported Commander Susan Baker from her reconnaissance ship. "The surviving creatures are merging together, forming even larger entities, and they're all heading straight for Earth." Helen looked at the tactical display showing the remaining Devourers converging on humanity's home world. They had hurt the enemy badly, but the final battle was still to come. Everything would be decided in Earth's solar system, where an ancient artifact waited to either save the galaxy or watch it die. The final battle came to Earth's doorstep on a cold Tuesday morning. Captain Ben Lewis watched from the bridge of his cruiser as the remaining Devourer creatures entered the solar system. There were fewer of them now, but each one had grown massive by absorbing the others. "How many do you count?" asked his weapons officer, staring at the approaching darkness. 12, Ben replied grimly. 12 creatures, each one the size of a small planet. The Devourers moved past Mars like living storms, their tentacles reaching out to drain energy from anything they could touch. The human defense fleet, what remained of it after the battles at the Artemis Line, formed a protective wall around Earth. On the planet's surface, Dr. Alice Howard worked desperately in the Antarctic Research Station, built around the ancient artifact. The structure they had discovered was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It looked like a crystal cathedral made of materials that seemed to bend light around them. "The energy readings are off the charts," she reported to Admiral Brooks, on the orbiting command ship. "This thing has enough power to light up half the galaxy, but I can't figure out how to activate it." "Doctor, you need to hurry," Admiral Brooks replied. "The Devourers are almost at Earth's atmosphere." Alice ran her hands over the smooth surfaces of the artifact, searching for any kind of control mechanism. The structure hummed with energy. That made her teeth ache, but there were no buttons, no switches, nothing that looked like human technology. Above the planet, Captain Ben Lewis led the Earth Defense Fleet in a desperate holding action. His ships fired their electromagnetic weapons at the approaching Devourers, but the creatures were too big and too powerful. They absorbed the energy attacks and kept coming. "Captain, they're breaking through the outer perimeter," reported his tactical officer. 3 of them are heading straight for the polar region where the artifact is located. Ben realized what was happening. The Devourers could sense the artifact just like Dr. Ross had predicted. They weren't just trying to destroy Earth. They were trying to claim the ancient device for themselves. "All ships form up on me," Ben ordered. "We're going to stop those 3 creatures, whatever it takes." The human ships threw themselves at the approaching Devourers with desperate courage. Frigates rammed into tentacles the size of skyscrapers. Destroyers emptied their weapon stores into the creatures' massive bodies. One by one, the ships were destroyed, but they bought precious time. General Paul Clark coordinated the ground defenses as the battle moved into Earth's atmosphere. Anti-aircraft guns and missile batteries fired at the devourer tentacles that reached down like giant fingers, trying to touch the surface. "They're trying to land near the artifact site," he reported. "All ground forces, concentrate fire on grid, Section 7. But conventional weapons barely scratched the creatures. The devourers were too powerful, too alien. Their dark energy was starting to drain the life from Earth's atmosphere itself. In the Antarctic Research Station, Dr. Alice Howard made a breakthrough when she pressed her hand against the artifact's central pillar. The structure suddenly responded to her touch, recognizing something in her human DNA that it had been waiting for. "It's reading my genetic code," she gasped, as the artifact began to glow brighter. This thing was built for humans, for our ancestors. The ancient device started to reveal its secrets. Images flashed through Alice's mind, memories stored in the crystal structure for 50,000 years. She saw the original war against the devourers, fought by humans who looked just like people. Today, she saw their final sacrifice using this same artifact to banish the creatures to a dark dimension between realities. "Admiral Brooks, I understand now," Alice called urgently. "The artifact can seal the devourers away, but it needs enormous amounts of energy to power the dimensional barriers, more energy than Earth can provide." Above the planet, Admiral Brooks received the message while watching her fleet being systematically destroyed. Only a handful of ships remained operational, and the devourers were almost at the surface. "How much energy are we talking about, Doctor?" she asked. "Everything," Alice replied. "Every power core, every engine, every energy source in the human fleet. We'd have to link them all to the artifact and drain them completely." Brooks understood what that meant. The ships would lose life support, propulsion, everything. The crews would be stranded in dead vessels, floating in space. "Admiral," called Captain Mary Evans from the last remaining command ship, "I'm reading your thoughts on the tactical channel. If that's what it takes to save Earth, we're ready." One by one, the remaining human ships acknowledged the order. Captains and crews across the solar system prepared to sacrifice their vessels to power the ancient weapon. "All ships, link your power cores to the artifact's frequency," Brooks ordered. "On my mark, transfer all energy reserves." The artifact began to pulse with increasing brightness as ship after ship connected their power systems to its energy network. The crystal structure grew so bright it could be seen from orbit, like a second sun rising from Antarctica. "Mark," Admiral Brooks said quietly. Across human space, ships went dark as their crews transferred every joule of energy to the artifact. Life support systems failed, engines shut down, emergency lighting flickered and died. But the sacrifice worked. The artifact erupted with power that tore holes in reality itself. Dimensional rifts opened around each devourer, pulling them back toward the dark realm they had escaped from. The creatures fought desperately, but the ancient technology was too strong. One by one, the devourers were dragged through the rifts and banished from normal space. The last one let out a scream of rage that echoed across dimensions before disappearing forever. As the rifts sealed themselves, rescue ships from the surviving human colonies raced to help the powerless fleet. The sacrifice had worked, but at tremendous cost. 5 years later, Ambassador Claire Roberts stood before the rebuilt Galactic Council on Nexus Prime. The alien species had returned from their long exile, humbled and grateful. "The humans did what no other species could do," she told the assembled delegates. "They stood when others ran. They fought when others surrendered. They sacrificed everything to save everyone. The Centauri offered their most advanced technologies to help rebuild human civilization. The Korgan Empire requested military alliance treaties wanting to learn human battle tactics. The Crystalline Collective provided precious crystals to power human worlds. But Claire's favorite part of her speech came at the end. 5 years ago, every species in the galaxy fled from an ancient enemy. Today, human ships patrol the borders of known space, watching for new threats. We learned that the greatest strength isn't in running from darkness, but in standing together against it. In the depths of space, Captain Jake Morrison commanded a new exploration vessel, the Valiant Dawn II. He looked out at the stars, no longer afraid of what might be hiding in the darkness between them. Humanity had remembered what it meant to be the guardians of the galaxy, and they would never forget again.